Certainly how I started in politics is different for every person. For me, it was very much driven by my children. So I have young school children. They are twins. I'm very efficient. I had a boy and a girl all at once, and was very active in their school system, like many parents are, volunteering on many committees and in the classroom, and was finding things that were working for our kids well and things that were not working, particularly during the Great Recession. And so I went to our principal and I said, hey, these things that aren't working, what committee have you not put me on? What have I not volunteered on already that we can fix them? Things like how our teachers are treated, our curriculum, what support we have for our children. And he said, there's no committee that addresses that. You have to go to Sacramento. Those are where the laws that affect our local community on those issues come from. That's how I decided to run for state assembly, was to just get involved that way for education. So very much driven by my own experience with kids in our schools.
I see. Do you have any specific examples of what they are concrete?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, during the Great Recession, for example, when local school districts had to lay off teachers, you would think that when they had to let them go because they didn't have enough money to pay all of them, you'd want your school to be able to say, okay, who are our best teachers, or what are the fourth grade teachers that we need for the amount of students we have coming in? Our schools aren't allowed to say that. They're only allowed to say who's junior and who's senior, and all the junior teachers get laid off and only the senior teachers stay. And that's too rigid a rule. That's a very, very rigid rule for our schools. So I believe that the schools should at least have some flexibility to consider the needs of students and the different teachers they have, rather than only seniority. So that was one rule that I saw affecting local school districts, local classrooms, and local teachers that has to be changed in Sacramento. And that's just one example right there. Very, very important to me, because we saw award-winning, terrific, wonderful teachers be the first ones to be laid off only because they were junior in their seniority. And I felt that was, what does that say about our kids if that's a policy? And so that's something I wanted to be able to change.
Things like that, it's you think it's not what do you say? It's not right.
It's not common sense.
It's not common sense.
Yeah, right.
What else do you think?
Well, there's a couple other ones in education. There's one right now that I feel very strongly about, and it's one that guided me in my original campaign, and that's the University of California system. This is a wonderful education system for our kids, for Californians. I went there for law school. My husband went there undergrad. And so many families in our community hope that their children will have a good opportunity to apply and to possibly be admitted. But the University of California has been putting preference treatment on non-resident students over California students, and it's closing the doors for hardworking families and people who've lived here in California to have an opportunity to go to the University of California system. That was one that really concerned me, and one of the reasons why I'm pleased to be vice chair of the higher education system. There's another issue that really affected me greatly in education, and that was the attempt to bring back affirmative action through SCA 5, and attempts since then to bring back affirmative action, which I think is unfair and is a backwards way to look at educational opportunity. We know that SCA 5 was an issue in 2014 and 2013. 20 years ago, when I was a law student at Berkeley, I was one of the only students who stood up in front of national television cameras and said, I support ending affirmative action and treating people equally, not based on the color of their skin or their racial background. And that was not a very popular position back on the Berkeley campus 20 years ago. But to this day, I'm very proud of being a long-term supporter of equal opportunity.
On this one?
Sure. So the law school class,
when was that?
This was back about 17 years ago when I entered law school in 1997. It was the first year that law school admissions were supposed to have Proposition 209 in the policy. And that was a proposition in California that said no more using racial preferences for people to get into school or to be kept from getting into school. And so it was very, very controversial. My law school class, on our first day of law school, there were a lot of protests for not having Prop 209, old affirmative action policies. And there were TV cameras everywhere looking for someone who was willing to say this was the right way to go. It was right to end affirmative action and have racial preferences and racial division in our admissions policies. And I was the only student who stood up on TV and was willing to say, this is the right way to go. Diversity isn't simply a function of your race or your skin color. And here 20 years later, that's something I'm still very much fighting for equal opportunity of the individual in our college admissions.
Why do you think it's not right?
I think it's not right because it ignores that we are individuals with individual talents, and to treat people and their worth based on what group they are a member of rather than who they are and what their individual talents and opportunities are, I think is wrong. I think it is something that has people rely on stereotypes and is very shallow, and I think it closes opportunities for individuals from all backgrounds to succeed. And I think it's a backwards way of looking at educational opportunity. That's what I believe.